So this episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Printed in Blood and the Hannibal Art Book, available at hannibalartbook.com, a collection of brand new pieces of artwork created for and inspired by the hit series Hannibal.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
That's is right. Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I'm here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork. We're here with Steve Hovicki, the beating heart of Printed in Blood. Is that a good description?
That's fair. That is absolutely fair.
When the blood spurts, it's yours, really, on that.
Yes, that is for sure.
Yeah. So for the dear listener who's not aware of Printed in Blood, we've brought them up a number of times on the podcast because we have been in the Thing art book that they produced, the Ghostbusters art book they produced, Stranger Things, Aliens in Justin's case, Hannibal in mine. We just love the stuff that you're doing. But the first question that comes up that Justin brought up just before we let you in out of the waiting room was so many great books before you got to Kickstarter. First created, first Kickstarter. Why there now when you didn't before? We have a number of suspicions as to why that might be the case, given the state of the world.
The main reason is this is only our, if you count Halloween, which is coming, this is only our third self-published book. The Thing book was obviously our first project, and we didn't have any idea what we were doing at the time. That was such a seat of the pants sort of project for us. I mean, that was a massive learning opportunity for us, and it taught us a lot of stuff, like don't make 6-pound books to be your first project, but that's another story. And basically everything we've done between then and now, those have been done with other publishers, and they held the publication of those projects. So like we did it under their license, like the 3 books we've done with Titan, the one we did with Insight, they actually held the licenses. So they were publishing the book. All we did was take a flat fee up front. So we never had a say in that. So in Halloween's case and in now Hannibal's case, we actually have the license ourselves. Halloween, the people at Halloween were not comfortable having another third-party licensee run a Kickstarter for something that held their name, that was utilizing their name and property.
I could see that's Storm King there, right?
No. This is Compass International Pictures. This is
of course, because it's Halloween. Yeah.
This is Mustafa Akkad's son Malik runs Compass, and he's the one who makes those calls. And I absolutely understand. It's just, this is a property that's near and dear and is as close to being a legacy to his family as you're going to find. So they were not comfortable with that position, and so we went a different route. However, Hannibal, which was through Gaumont Television, were okay with it. So this has literally been our first opportunity to do something like this.
Oh, well, that's excellent. My question is, and maybe I think a dear listener would have this same question. How do you get on the phone with these people? How do you get in a room with these people and say, okay, I want to make these books? To me, the obvious path is, since you made the Thing, however you made that Thing art book, when you put that in front of somebody, it is undeniably a tome of high caliber love packed into a single book for a property, right? I assume that's how you're convincing these people that you should.
I will tell you that that book has been the single greatest proof of concept we could have possibly put out for ourselves. And like you said, it has been the thing that we were able to wedge the door open with a lot of companies.
Physically, you can knock the door open by tossing this.
Yeah. Well, not literally, as well as metaphorically. I mean, from day one, we understood that. I mean, we had met back in the early days before the book was even published, this is the Thing book now. This is back in 2017, early 2017. We had a meeting with the people over at Warner Brothers because we knew somebody over there in licensing for consumer products. And we had come in, we had talked to them about what we were doing and what we wanted out of the Warner Brothers kind of library of stuff at the time that they had access to that we were really interested in, which was basically Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And if at all possible, massive wish list Harry Potter. So at the time, they were just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I think we get the idea of what you're doing. And by the time licensing show came around, which was in May in Vegas, we actually had air freighted a couple of copies of the book to us to have in hand. And we handed it over to our guy at Warner Brothers at the time in Vegas. And he looked at it and he just goes, oh, hold on a second. Let me see if the head of global publishing for Warner Brothers is available for a quick meeting. Because, and like I said, once you actually see it and look at it, you really get a better sense of the projects and the caliber of what we're doing. Yeah,
it sort of sells itself. For our dear listener, why don't you talk a little bit about, we talk a lot about different trade shows and like what their constituent parts are. Why don't you talk about the licensing show in Vegas and what that's like for someone who hasn't been there?
Oh boy. Licensing show, it's funny. I was involved in the toy industry for a number of years as well, through friendships and I worked for Mezco for a couple of years, and I worked kind of peripherally with Gentle Giant and Palisades Toys back in the day. And so I go to Toy Fair every year, and it's simply because I know people there, and I go and I spend a couple hours, I say hello to them, and I go home. I have no business being there. But licensing show is very similar to Toy Fair in the way that the average person thinks, oh my God, I want to go to Toy Fair. That'd be so fun. It's really not, believe it or not. It's surprisingly unfun. Because I mean, some of the cool companies like NECA and like Mezco, for example, and some of those companies still do really cool setups where they're showing you advanced prototypes of the stuff that they're going to have coming out in the coming year. So like those guys, that's cool stuff to see. But upstairs in like the mainstream toy section, you have huge companies like Lego, Hasbro, and these companies, their booths are completely enclosed. And the only way you can get through into the booth is to have a meeting in place with someone who is there. And that's the only time you're going to see anything. So it's really, it's not like a typical convention where you go and there's just all this stuff on display. The one fun part about it, I will say, is when you go over into like the games and like the independent toys and stuff like that, where people have bought a booth space and they're just trying to sell something that they invented. You find a lot of really cool stuff there. Now with licensing show, and again, this is a trade only show, but I mean, again, anyone can go to licensing show. It's not even as like restricted as Toy Fair is. Licensing show is, it's really just meetings. You set up all these meetings ahead of time. And because if you just walk around, you can just walk up to like a booth, like Nintendo or Toho or Blizzard Entertainment or even Funko, and try and get meetings if someone's available. But most of the time you have all your stuff set up ahead of time. And a lot of the bigger companies, they don't even show up, like Netflix and Disney. They don't even have displays on the floor. Like all their meetings are held offsite in like, they'll take up like a whole ballroom and kind of cordon it off into little meeting tables. And your meetings are all set up, not even on the show floor at licensing show. But it's really just about making connections to companies and trying to find people within those companies and within consumer products who are open-minded enough to see the vision of creating something cool that everyone agrees won't make $1 million.
The lamb is becoming a lion. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? I'll still be standing.
The problem with companies like Warner Brothers, and this is not any detriment to Warner Brothers, but they want, they have a huge library and they want companies to come in and buy access to their entire library in one shot and sell access to different regions of the world. So it's like, I want access, and I want a license for, even if I want a license just for something like, say, for example, let's say Harry Potter, although I would believe at this point, Harry Potter is probably a separate deal than their sort of library license that they sell. You'd go in and they want like $150,000 guaranteed on a license for 3 years. And that's just for like North America and Canada, right, or North America. And, if different regions are all additional costs to that. So at the end of the day, you may spend $250,000 or $300,000 for a worldwide license, but is anything we're going to make that much money back on royalties to pay that back? I mean, that's really the question, or are we going to be able to put out enough material based on products in their library that would warrant that? And the answer is no. I mean, we can't play in that sandbox, not yet anyway. Right. So, we find ourselves in the case of the Hannibal book, the licensing company that manages the thing for Gaumont, they actually reached out to us. Wow. We had a meeting with them several years ago about something that they handled at the time. It didn't work out. And then out of the blue, they actually reached out to us because they had seen our other books and were really interested in talking about Hannibal and a couple other their properties that they managed. So with the success of the Hannibal book, obviously, we're talking to them about further products on different licenses. So one thing leads to another. It's like, we've bootstrapped this company from the beginning, just kind of rolling over anything we've made from any project just into the position we're in now, to where we can start buying our own licenses for these projects, because that's really how you continue to grow the company.
Right. And we've talked lots of times on the podcast about the transparency related to what seems like all this free money from Kickstarter. Anyone printing a book like any of your art books that you've produced, the cost per unit is very high. The shipping on a project like that would be, I can imagine, astronomical. And so even despite the success, I have to imagine that the margin is still got you sweating a little bit.
Well, on this project, the thing about Kickstarter is, unless you're set up ahead of time and you're big enough that it warrants using a company like BackerKit to do your post-campaign shipping and fulfillment. Shipping, because you're still doing all the fulfillment anyway. That's a whole different operation. You add in the shipping money on Kickstarter because it helps you hit your goal quicker. And if that's the case, you look at a number like ours. I mean, even sitting at 135,000 right now, I'm guessing probably at least 25% of that is shipping.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like that, we're looking at that going, woohoo, we're taking next year off, because, between, you lose your 10% to Kickstarter, a big chunk of that money is your shipping costs. And if you've miscalculated at any point along that route, if I've got to ship books to somebody in the Philippines or in Russia,
or our favorite, Australia. We love people in Australia. We have fans in Australia. Man, shipping books to them is basically like a zero-sum game.
Absolutely.
They always want to make it worth it. So the people further away don't want to just get the small thing you have available. They want to get the big box package, because if they're going to pay all that shipping, they're really going to make it worth it.
They want everything in one. And that's why we've looked at that, and we did a lot of research into that. And I hope that when it comes time for us to start buying shipping labels, that we have configured correctly. But either way, and again, now you've got, and then people don't consider the fact that we're going to have to pay taxes on all this.
Yeah.
So this is, we've now got taxes taking a bite. And by the time you get down to it, the cost of actually printing the book, believe it or not, is we're fine with that. That's the first number you ever get in any of these projects. That's the first one you kind of nail down.
Well, I was going to say, you're deep enough into this with we spend a lot of time talking to printers. And I see the different spot varnishes and
sure,
stitching and the cloth binding and all this kind of stuff that you guys have going on. I'm sure that you've got a book rep that is sharpening their knives every time you send them an email. So I'm sure.
And I'll be honest, we are now at the point where we directly speak to factories in China. We aren't, we have a broker that we've used in the past. We use the same broker that we used for the Thing book will be used for the Halloween book. But because of the success of the Hannibal Kickstarter, we've actually had several Chinese factories reach out to us directly. And getting quotes direct from the factory in China, the payment terms being exactly the same, the quotes are considerably less. So, I mean, it's a big difference going, literally direct to the factory and having someone at the factory you can build a relationship with.
I can't get you out of my head.
Friendship can sometimes involve a breach of individual separateness.
You're not my friend. The light from a friendship won't reach us for 1,000,000 years. That's how far away from friendship we are.
Let's jump in a time machine right now, if you would.
Oh boy.
Let's go all the way back to
2017.
Well, I'm just thinking, let's go back to, hey, what if we made a Thing art book?
Which is where we met you. It was actually at the New York Comic-Con when you were floating around the idea. And I think were you there to meet artists and find artists to contribute to the book? Or were you there to find publishers? What, like your relationship with the convention? I wanted to talk about that at some point too.
So, with New York, I mean, I know the guys at Reed Pop. I've known the guys at Reed Pop ever since they started that show. They're a great bunch of guys. But no, we were never really connected with them at all. I live in New York, so going to New York, that Comic-Con is a no-brainer for me. The year we were there passing out flyers and stuff like that to artists, trying to dig up people for the book, and we were just, we didn't know anything. So we were just like hitting everyone. We had every artist we knew, first of all, and had email contacts for. And then we would go to conventions and we would just go through Artist Alley and be like, ooh, I like that guy's artwork. Let's hand them a flyer and see if they're interested, And that's another reason how that book grew to the size that it was. We kind of cherry picked guys and artists, any artists we could see whose styles we just really dug. And then it became a word of mouth thing where a lot of people kind of passed the word around in circles among their friends.
There was a buzz. There was a buzz on the show floor of like, oh man, they're putting this together. I have to be in this.
And did you guys have to end up like jurying entries or capping it off, or how did you pick what was gonna make it into the book and what wasn't?
How many hearts did you break, Steve?
Yeah.
How many hearts did you break?
Well, as you guys well know, that book is 400 pages.
400 pages, yeah.
There are 386 pieces of art in that book. I think all told, we had about a little over 400 submissions. We broke very few hearts. The pieces that we knocked out of that book were either artists who had submitted more than one piece, there's no good way to say this, but there are certain times when you have an artist who's going to submit work to one of our projects who is, in the words of SNL, just not quite ready for prime time. Okay. Sure. Yeah. And, and we keep our bar pretty low. We like to be as inclusionary as possible. And we like experimental stuff. We like stuff that's different. And so it's like, sometimes we'll get stuff in and we'll look at it and go, all right, is this guy just kind of too low on the curve? Like if he comes back in a year on another project, is he going to deliver something that's past the point where we're going to look at and go, okay, this is where we need to be. The thing that blew me away about the Thing book was I had artists approach me and send me like examples of their work, obviously, who we hadn't reached out to. They had either found out about the book online or they've gotten through to friends. And I was just like, oh boy, we'll see what we get from this guy. And I would say almost without exception, the piece that those people that I thought when I looked at their work was kind of like going to be, oh boy, we'll see what we get from this guy. Their pieces were all exceptional. Like I was like, how did the guy that showed me this bundle of work produce this now? Because whatever he's showing to people, he should not be showing that. He should be showing this stuff.
I'll tell you why. Because Steve, these books, and I think what you've found is a lightning rod for people's joy. People who have been inspired to make art have often been inspired by these genre pictures and these things. And so suddenly they have a chance to express just how much they loved it and how important it was to them in a way that is not like doing licensed work. You know, like if you get hired to do a licensed work, you kind of, you know, you're taking the king's shilling, if you will, and you're just doing what you have to do. But in this, it's volunteer. You're submitting, and what you get out of it in most cases is the chance to resell a certain number of those prints as a licensed property. And so it's only people who already have a art practice who now finally get to show their love back into a thing that helped me. Like that's my experience with it 100%.
It's the dream of that young fledgling artist to be able to say like, I'm in an official The Thing art book. Like that is a huge feather in your cap, especially when you're starting out. There's nothing more you want than to be able to say, I did work for a property like Stranger Things.
That's right. Or a dried out husk of a man like myself. I still get excited, right? Still get excited to just give back a little to that community that didn't know I existed. There's no way to know that you know, it's almost like people returning to the source.
Yeah. And we found that, I mean, our email list now for artists has grown to well over 1,500 members. So, I mean, we go out with an email blast to artists for a project. We go out to, you know, and and on Hannibal, we'll probably add another 150 names to the list. And we know more than anyone. Not every property is for every artist. You know, we had a lot of artists who produced work for the Thing book who have never worked with us again. And it wasn't because I don't think they enjoyed it. It's just because they haven't seen another property come along that kind of gives them the same feeling. And I think it's really about, there are those artists who do a piece for every project we do because they like doing pieces for projects, and they like, you know, they like what we're doing. They like being a part of the Printed in Blood family.
Now, do you have any artists who like just get sad when they realize they missed one? Like I was talking with Justin earlier, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I missed the window on the Aliens book."
It broke his heart that he missed that one.
But 100% on me, and not on anything to do. You're right. There is a clear line of communication, right? But the event, we call it the event here on the podcast, Steve. The event changed a lot of things in and around here, and it just changed my focus for a short time. But
it's always an exciting day at the studio when we get a Printed in Blood email, like, oh, they're doing a Firefly book. Let's get excited and think about what we would do. And
right on.
Yeah, cool. Every time one of your emails came in, the studio lit up.
And it's not because we don't have other things we probably should be doing for our clients. It's just because, like you say, it's just it's fun.
Right. Right. We know everything we do does not speak to every artist, but we like to really dig in and find those artists that do have that connection.
What is he apologizing for?
He couldn't honor her. He feels bad.
Well, feeling bad defeats the purpose of being a psychopath, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Then what kind of crazy is he?
The Hannibal Project has unearthed a whole different array of artists who would probably never have reached out to us for any other project we did, but this one. But going forward, they might consider, you know, doing a work on another project just because, hey, maybe I'd like to see what that property looks like in my style.
Yeah, Justin was with me the day that a friend of ours at a show said, "Hey, you're a Hannibal fan, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." "Do you know that in Toronto is where they did most of those effects?" I was like, "Get out of town." We were at the Toronto Comic-Con. And they're like, "Yeah, I'll call them. I'll get a tour. You can see all the props." I was like, "Shut up. No, you can't." And then, you know, an hour later, we were touring through Mind Warp FX.
We were looking up at the body totem from season 1 or 2.
Oh, man.
It's that just up on their wall, covering their ceiling. Like,
like we have art hanging on the wall of the studio. They have all these corpses and Hannibal.
Because that's what you do. Right.
Yeah, I guess that's what you do.
You say
when you do that for a living, you hang what you do on the walls, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, it just happens to be corpses.
That's right. Well, it's their art. That's like what they spend their time doing. They had a great story. The way their studio is, there's a loading bay, but it's like a shared space. You could drive in behind for every different business there can load into the back of their businesses. And so there's a big roll top steel doors, and they apparently somebody who was waiting for another business to load out saw them hauling bodies into the back of their business and called the police on them because there's a room full of corpses at this business. You have to come fast. You have to come quickly. So they've had that problem, I think, probably a few times. But it's because they're, they're making make-believe that's so believable that it's actually make you retch. It's kind of a weird, macabre poetry, for sure.
I had to share a story as well. My piece for the Stranger Things art book actually got picked up by Netflix. I got contacted by Netflix, and they wanted to use it for. In my mind, I don't exactly know how it worked, but if Netflix liked your artwork from that book, they just wanted the rights to use it for whatever else they wanted.
Correct. They wanted to add it to their sort of media kit that would go out to other people who do consumer products.
Oh, this is when you became Mr. December.
Yes. So my mom was in Walmart a month or two ago, waiting on my grandma to finish up shopping, and she picked up a Stranger Things calendar, and my artwork from the Stranger Things book is December. I got the December.
Oh, that's awesome.
Things are. So my mom subsequently bought, I think, 6 or 7 calendars.
As moms will do.
Yeah. And now I'm in a calendar. So I thought that was so neat because Netflix didn't let me know exactly where it was going to end up. But it was so cool to find it in the wild being used that way.
And it replaces your dream of being in the firefighter calendar that will never come to pass. Right. So the firefighter calendar.
Firefighter. Yeah.
Oh, firefighter.
So I have a technical question about when you're doing a book. Stranger Things is a good example because, like you said, you did it for another publisher. You kind of came in and kit bashed it for them. Right.
And I'll tell you the funny story about that. So my business partner in the company, his wife worked for Nike for a number of years, and her business at Nike she was in charge of what was originally product placement, but became brand partnerships later on. And so she had a meeting with Netflix about Stranger Things because Nike was getting ready to do a whole tie-in thing with Stranger Things season 3. So she was actually the sort of impetus for getting us in the room because we kind of piggybacked with her on her meeting with Netflix, and we brought Thing books with us to give to them. And we were like, hey, we would love to do a book like this for Stranger Things. And they're like, wow, this is really cool. Well, we'll be in touch. And we were just like, oh, okay, fine. But sure enough, after the show, we were at Comic-Con in San Diego, and they were like, hey, we're going to have a representative there. Can you sit down and talk to them? And we're like, yeah, sure. No
because
problem.
Unlike a business card, your Thing book was impossible to ignore. They hauled that around all day.
Right. It was being used as a doorstop for all their offices. So we had the meeting at Comic-Con, and then we were finally able to kind of start the ball rolling. And, they were like, at the time we were partnered kind of in the middle of setting up the deal with Insight for Ghostbusters. And so we had mentioned Insight to them, and they were just like, well, are you guys married to publishing through one of these other publishers, or are you okay working with, like, say, Random House? And I'm like, I refuse to work with Random House. Right.
They're too big.
So, yeah, exactly. So, but that was like they'd already had a publishing deal in place with Random House. So basically the next step was them calling Random House and saying, we want these guys to do this book. Here's what we're paying them. Please get the contract done and get the book made. So after that, we were essentially handed off to Random House, and that's how that kind of project came to be.
So did you have to give up editorial control or content control more so in a deal like that, or were you able to still sort of do the printed in blood thing?
I'll tell you, ever since the Thing book, where we literally had zero oversight. With the deal we made for the Thing is one that no one ever gets. I'll tell you that right now. And it was just because at the time we had a connection who was working at Universal, who no longer works there. And they were able to get us basically a deal where Universal signed off on us being able to use the Thing logo, as long as we were using no other assets from the movie itself, meaning we were not actually using any film stills, the script, anything like that.
As long as your content was self-generated.
Correct. And there was zero oversight. We didn't have to submit anything for approvals. There was no likeness approvals. There was literally zero conversation between us and Universal. And the deal was just like, we won't come after you after the fact for this. And so we were like, okay. And I mean, it really spoiled us because basically every project after that, we've had to work with either the creative directors at a publisher who will always try and put their mark on whatever project you're doing. I mean, you just have to kind of, it was a great teaching moment. All these have been working with these creative directors, because like I said, every creative director, regardless of where they're positioned in the company, and even knowing that their company approached us to make this book for them because they like the way we make books, they're still going to want to put their stamp on it. And the other thing is that company has all of the interaction with the original licensor. So you aren't privy to those conversations.
Right.
And so you don't know what's being said in those conversations where they're presenting artwork to somebody and you hear back, well, they didn't like that, or they didn't like this. And it's like, did they really not like it? Or did you not like it? And you can just say, well, they didn't like it, because they know that you can't really challenge it. And you start getting those thoughts in your head, and you just kind of have to get rid of them because it's just detrimental to the whole project.
Her liver was removed.
You see that?
Mm-hmm. Took it out, and then, he put it back in.
Huh. Why would he cut it out if he's just going to sew it back in again?
There's something wrong with the meat.
You kind of put your best foot forward, and you kind of pick things like, for example, for covers. We would submit options to them for what we thought were the best images that created the most interesting covers for projects. And in the case of Stranger Things, they actually came back with Eileen's from SG Posters, her image from the book that they just really, really liked, and they just really landed on. And we had never really even thought about that one as a cover. And we were just like, oh, okay. But they landed on it almost right away.
It's
and
we're just cover. Yes,
yeah. And stayed with it and loved it. The other thing is doing projects ourselves. Like in the case of the Hannibal book, we presented them with 3 or 4 pieces as options for covers, knowing we were going to do 2 different covers. We're doing one cover for the Kickstarter, and then when it goes up for mass market release, up for pre-order on Wednesday after the Kickstarter ends, it will be a completely different cover. And you won't be able to get that Kickstarter cover ever again. So we were lucky because they were able to give them, saying, hey, you guys can pick 2 covers you like, and we'll be able to use both of them. But like in the case of Aliens, we presented them originally, they had already had all the artwork in hand because all had been submitted for approvals. And we submitted, I think, 4 or 5 images to them that we felt would be great covers. And a couple of the covers, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Devin Francisco's cover that was eventually came out as the Aliens cover. But there were 2 pieces that I felt made a much stronger design-based impact. And I understand this, and this is part and parcel to where I'm going. So these established companies like Titan and Insight and them do a lot of their sort of internal consultory work with their sales departments. And it's like, well, what do you think is going to be the best image to sell this book? And that's how they make their decisions. And that, to the design-based person, the creative, that can be the most frustrating time in any project.
We've been there.
Is having design decisions based on marketing and sales.
Yeah.
And that's so tough.
So do you have, Steve, what's your background before, we jump in that time machine again, before you're making the Thing art book and doing Printed in Blood? What is your relationship to art, to making art, to appreciating art? How does that work?
Good question.
I built homes and apartment buildings for a living. I was in construction for almost 20 years.
So you built the bones of people's lives.
Yes, I did that for almost 20 years. And then I was back. This was back in Illinois. And then in 2007, I moved to New York and decided I did not want to be in my 50s swinging a hammer, still working outside year round. I just didn't, I wanted to try and figure something out. So basically what happened is I had been working security for conventions for Wizard at the time.
Oh, yeah.
For the Wizard shows. And they found a position for me in their sort of headquarters office in New York. And I had just gotten divorced. And I had started seeing someone here in New York, and I just up and moved from Illinois to New York.
Was it fall in New York? All the best love stories from New York seem to always be in fall time. Auburn leaves.
I'll tell you this: the love story actually started in Texas, but we can say it was fall in New York. Yeah, because I moved to New York in February, so yeah, it would have been through the fall.
What I love about this story is that you literally, the carpenter that rebuilds a different kind of life for himself. But I still don't know where it went from I'm at shows in the infrastructure to
right.
Now I'm making books. This is amazing.
So me and a buddy of mine, our old designer, the guy who designed the Thing art book and all of our art books up through Halloween, he and I were absolutely in love with the alt poster industry. And so what we started to do was we had so many artist friends and guys we knew who loved to do art. So we started tapping into that back in 2012. So for 2012 would have been the 30th anniversary. So I was working for Long Beach Comic-Con at the time. And I knew the owners were friends of mine. The co-owner was actually now my business partner in Printed in Blood. They had a panel room that was empty and they didn't know what to throw into it. In the afternoon, they had an empty time frame. And I said, hey, it's the 30th anniversary of John Carpenter's The Thing. Why don't we do a screening of the movie? And this was back in a time when Mondo was just doing prints. And they were doing stuff like with Alamo Drafthouse, where people would go to a movie screening and they would get a free poster if they showed up. So what we ended up doing was we contacted my buddy Dan Panosian, and we asked him if he wanted to create a Thing image for us for a poster, which he did, which became the very first print we ever made. And then basically we didn't say anything to anybody. At the time, I was also, because that show was new, I had become friends with John and Sandy Carpenter because they were guests of the first show, the first year there in Long Beach, or maybe it was the second. Anyway, John had made an appearance at the show one year, so I'd become friendly with both of them. So I made an arrangement with them. I said, hey, do you think we could come and get some of these posters signed? And John was like, yeah, sure. Just come over to the house and we'll do a bunch of stuff. So I brought prints over to the house. Sandy made chili. We hung out. He signed a bunch of posters for us. Dan Panosian came over as well, and he signed a bunch. So we had a bunch of the posters signed by both John Carpenter and the artist.
So many of our listeners are going to be very jealous of this story.
So, I believe me, I have plenty of my own friends who are jealous of that story. So then basically what we did is at the screening at the convention, we waited till the screening was over. At the time, I think there were maybe 25 people in there. They just basically wanted a break from the show and just came in there to sit down and watch the thing, The film ended. As they were walking out, we just handed people a double signed print. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know what they were getting. They were just like, oh, okay. But once they took the time to look at it, they would be like, oh shit. All right. So then we, with the ones we had left over, we then were able to, put those up for sale on, ourselves. And we gave a bunch of prints to Sandy at Storm King and let her do with them and kind of disseminate those as she wished. I think she sold all of hers for charity. And then we had, obviously, Dan got some as well.
I'm very careful about what I put into my body, which means I end up preparing most meals myself. A little protein scramble to start the day. Some eggs, some sausage.
That was the birth of Printed in Blood. That's like before the company I had even come up with a name for the company. And so it was the following year's show. I was going to be there again. And I'm like, hey, let's do some more prints, So we ended up doing 4 more prints that year. And we did 4 more prints like each successive year for the next 3 or 4 years. And then we started, I think in 2018, we did prints for for Long Beach, also for like New York Comic-Con. And just, and then we started doing we kind of realized that it got to a point where we were a very, very small fish in what was getting to be a very, very full pond of print companies. And we were doing prints, just standard offset printing, not doing any of the fancy lithograph or screen printing stuff that like Mondo and Gray Matter and those guys are doing. So we very quickly felt like that was going to be a very hard uphill climb for us. And we'd seen kind of what we moved in prints, and it was enough to break even on them. But we never, we knew we were never going to get rich on doing these prints we had. I mean, you go to the website, we still have all the prints we still have in stock up there for sale. You can still see almost all of them. We've only sold out of a couple of them. But, and we only made, I think, 200 of each one every time we printed.
So books were a way to kind of differentiate yourself from all those print companies that were becoming more and more prevalent at the conventions and
right. So I also do work with Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City. And so I was there to show in 2016, and I'm walking around the show floor. And I had a conversation with my friends over at Aspen Comics. And I was just talking to them about printing and doing books and whatever. The conversation just skewed in a direction.
And then direct for the fans. They're like, they know how to make books direct for their fans.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, and I had no concept on how the sausage was made, so I was just curious about how that kind of stuff worked. And about the same time, I don't know if you guys have seen or remember this, but when Mad Max Fury Road came out, which I absolutely adore, I'm a huge Mad Max fan, and we've been fighting to try and get a Mad Max license.
I was just going to ask, Steve.
I have been working every possible link, known connection that I have, and everything else to try and get some way to speak to George Miller, because Warner Brothers won't license through Warner Brothers because he had a really bad experience with Road Warrior, and he doesn't license anything. Funko is able to make pops for Mad Max Fury Road simply because they have a blanket license, and because of, I think, the truckloads of cash that they're delivering to Warner Brothers. Right. Warner Brothers just looked the other way when they made that series of figures and just said, only do one run. We won't talk about it ever again.
Right.
So DC Comics, I'm sorry, at the time, who was owned by Warner Brothers, put out a Mad Max Fury Road collection. They went to like 60 of their comic book artists, and they said, hey, make us a Mad Max Fury Road image. We're going to collect it into a book and print it.
Yeah, because it ripped through comic land. We all those of us who work in visual media saw that as just a masterpiece.
Okay, my problem is I got the book, and Ben Templesmith's a good buddy of mine, and I'd seen his piece before the book was published. So I knew exactly what it looked like. And it took me 2 times flipping through the book to even find his piece, because they did it in that comic book format. And the gutter was so deep on that book, and it doesn't open flat. I couldn't find the image because it's got that central icon of like the steering wheel with the skull, like in this as the sun in the image. And it was completely lost in the gutter because they gave the artist, they're like, do it all horizontal layout. And we're going to make every page a spread, which is great. But
if the book lies flat,
if you don't tell them that the center of your image is going to be lost, most artists are going to centralize their image. So there were a lot of images in that book which were destroyed by that gutter. And I basically got that book, love the artwork in it, love the artist they got. But as soon as I got it in my hands, I'm like, I could do this so much better. And me not knowing anything about publishing and printing, right? So I was just like, at that point, I was like, man, what if we did a book for like, the 35th anniversary of the thing, but let's go about it in this direction, and we'll get a bunch of artists to do pieces like that, and we'll make a really fucking cool book. And so that's that conversation in my brain literally started at that show in 2016. And we started talking because my buddy Phil was like, oh, I know this guy over at Universal. We can talk to him about, what it would take to get a license to do this. And that's how that whole thing came about. And at that time, basically, we just barreled into it. It was just a massive amount of email work and going back and forth with artists, and just, a lot of time spent on the computer really is what it was. And a lot of logistics, a lot of just keeping track of stuff coming in, going out, making sure everybody sends you a piece, you download it, put it into some place where it belongs right away, so you don't lose track of it later.
I have to observe here that making a book is less complicated than making a house. And since you already know how to do that, this is probably why you don't sound too stressed out by these things. Right now, I'm having cold sweats managing the emails of like the complete artist list of the Thing art book.
Right.
The days that are toughest on that from that front are when the days I would send out a email announcing a project, where then I would get back all the responses. Yes, I'm interested. So I got to send back then the specs on the project. So I got to make sure I hit every one of those. So I would shoot an email out to 1,000 people, and all of a sudden I'd wake up the next day and I'd literally be answering emails for 18 hours straight. Because, people, artists look at their emails. Some of them are very diligent about it. Some are very good. A lot of them have gotten better. But there are some guys who look at their emails once a week. And, so I would get responses that would go on for weeks, would be like, oh, hey, found this in my spam filter. Thought I'd ask about it. Is this still a thing? Does this still exist? But it's that day. And then usually the 2 days surrounding whatever the due date is, because being both artists, I'm sure you can both understand the idea that what's my deadline? Great. I'm going to turn it in then.
I'm guilty of the Aliens book. I think I skirted in just before the deadline or just after, and got a response along the lines of like, you're very lucky you're getting in this book.
You were like that kid that slides his assignment under the door of the teacher. Yeah. It's like, I gave it to you.
In true artistic fashion.
Yeah, slide it in. Well, just consider, Steve, that we are always interested. You don't have to sort it out. Whenever send us the specs. We're always interested. Because so far you have not picked a genre to connect Printed in Blood to that isn't a film that either I love or have loved for years. So just keep at it.
We are, and it's tough to find. It's tough to find the companies that want to work on a smaller scale. I mean, that's just tougher. So a lot of times we're finding it where we don't have a choice but to work with another publisher on those projects. And it just depends on the licensor itself on whether or not they're open to, like, for example, with Firefly and Aliens, those were both with 20th Century, and they were both unopen to the idea of having that licensed print proviso in the deal, simply because in the case of Aliens, they had a long-standing exclusive deal with Acme Archives for Alien prints, so they couldn't make a deal outside of that. Even something as sort of like small as this was, and not to be like a mainstream kind of release opportunity, they still couldn't make that deal no matter what. So it just and every project is different. It's funny.
Naturally, I respect its meticulous construction. But you are wearing a very well-tailored person suit.
I'd be curious to know how many projects, how many, fishing poles are out in how many ponds in order for you to figure out what license you can get and which project is the next project. Because it sounds like it's not as easy as I would have imagined. If
I showed you our working spreadsheet on projects that we either have had discussions with people on, or we're just part of our massive wish list, at the rate we work, we would have enough books to be published for the next 20 years.
That's exciting. Yeah. Justin just had a shiver. Yeah. He's just like,
well, and I'll tell you, we're starting to now branch out a little bit and being not just property focused. We've got some plans and some ideas. My partner Phil, as I love to call him, is the sound guy in the room. I'm more on the creative side of the partnership. So I'm sitting around thinking up crazy stuff to do and crazy projects to work on, and what I think would be really cool ideas that could potentially be, money makers. And then he comes back and says, no. That he's my someone like that. Yeah. He is my rock and chain that keep me anchored to the earth and keep me from floating off into the stratosphere. Yeah. But but I am constantly just like, hey, what about this? And he'll be like, I like that idea. And then he starts thinking about it and talking about it, and you realize, yeah, well, you and 8 other people would buy that book, but that's probably about it. We have a private message board that I try to keep for artists only access. It's pibforum.com. And it's funny because we have one of the threads on the board is dream projects. And because we like to hear from artists on, it's great. It's a great opportunity for us. We had a licensing company ask us one time what we thought about doing a project for Stargate, for example. And we were like, we honestly didn't know. I mean, we don't know the fan base. We don't know. And they're like, well, they do a convention every year. They have this, they have that. I enjoyed the movie. I'd never seen the TV show, so I had no sense of really the depth.
Fans, I like the original movie, but I haven't seen the show. But
when it's like 4 or 5 shows.
Yes. When you meet a Stargate fan, I imagine it must be like when people bring up Star Trek around me, because I just get like, oh, you would like to talk about Star Trek? What's your favorite nacelle configuration? Right? That's what Stargate fans are like when I meet them. And they're so disappointed in me that I've only seen. Oh, you only saw the movie, right? Yeah, so I think it's probably a pretty rabid fan base out there.
We got a pretty good response on the poll we had posted. It's not something that we have gone after as of yet, but it still exists there to be, and it's still part of a running conversation we have with MGM Studios. We have a couple of things with them we would like to do, and they just we have not had a chance to circle back with stuff with them since they got purchased by Amazon this year. So
yeah,
we're not sure how or if the landscape has changed as far as what they're doing as far as licensing goes. So I'm sure we will speak with them further at licensing show in May without a doubt, but we'll see what happens. But we've had talks with trying to think of what I can say. I mean, we've had initial talks with like Toho Studios. I would love to get access to their catalog.
Oh wow!
And we have a bunch of guys who would just go absolutely berserk if we got access to Godzilla. And this would be all the classic stuff, not the legendary stuff. This would be like from 54 to the 94. So
let me make rubber monsters on posters. I want to do.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, and that's the kind of project we look at and just go, oh my God, I would love to do that. And we know that there's an established base of like just rabid Godzilla fans out there who I think it'd be a very successful project. But
once per convention, I get asked, do you have a Godzilla?
Yeah,
like they're not interested in the 100 other things I have on the table. Do you have Godzilla?
Yeah, right.
No. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, exactly.
We call them like character hunters or drifters, where they just have this like glazed eye and they just come up to the booth and they don't want to look at what the booth is. They'll just say,
yes,
you have Godzilla, or do you have a Daredevil, or do you have, they're not interested in any of your body of work unless you have that.
That's correct. They like your style, but they're like, unless you've done that thing they do that they love,
I got no time for you. It's a big show. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I got a lot of other posters to go look at.
Totally. Steve, I have greatly enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
Hopefully we can do it again as more projects come out. Maybe we can get ahead of one of your Kickstarters and help you promote it when the time comes. Is there anything you'd like people to know about where they can track down your books, or is there some place, you already mentioned the message board for artists that are interested, but what's the best place people can show support for the work that you're doing?
I mean, they can always just go to printedinblood.com. That's the website. We have, all the books that we have done for other publishers. We have the links. I think we have the links up on the page to the Amazon sale pages for those books. Cause we don't sell them ourselves. We don't, the comp copies that we've purchased as extras for ourselves, for whether it be a planned internal exclusive or something of that nature, we don't retail the books ourselves. That's their job. That's their deal. That's their business. That's fine. So we'll have, right now at the site, you can still buy the Thing book. We had been selling the Thing book. We did an initial print run on that. Well, that's the other thing is learning print runs and what those numbers mean.
We've been there.
Is a big part of things. And we did a print run of the Thing of 10,000 copies. Now, 10,000
copies. That moment when you see the threshold and you're like, but the cost per unit, look at this beautiful cost per unit.
That's exactly right.
It's a lie, Steve.
That's exactly right. And as I said, we had done that. We had gotten them printed through our friends at Aspen Comics account with the printer. So we were able to get very favorable payment terms on getting them done. And it was funny because the bill came to them, and their comptroller contacted us and they were like, this is the biggest print bill I've ever seen. They're doing comics, occasionally they would do trade collections, but they wouldn't approach anything of the bill that we had for a 10,000 print run of a 400-page book. And then when they came in, I mean, it was 31 pallets of cartons.
I was just going to say, I can't imagine. I unloaded a pallet of his art book recently. I can't imagine having to. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, so we ended up keeping 20 pallets in LA, and we kind of chipped through those. And then I had 11 pallets delivered to me here in my house in New York and filled my garage with pallets of books. But I am happy to say, that's what I was getting to, that we have been selling over the past couple of years through Amazon, through their Advantage program, where you sell the books to Amazon and they resell them. We just recently shut that off because we are down now to less than 200 copies.
Hey, amazing.
Of the Thing art book. Yeah.
Normally when we hear this story, the story goes, I filled up my garage with the books and they're still sitting there.
You've done the impossible. Yeah. That's amazing.
They were there for a long time, but we've been very, very lucky, and it's maintained. It goes in waves. Like someone will bring it up and mention it again after a period of time, and all of a sudden we'll get a half dozen sales to the website or something.
Or as soon as you come out with a new book, right? As soon as Hamel comes out, people, yeah. Because
then what happens too is I'll remember that I still have like the Thing art book Twitter and Facebook accounts, which I always forget even exist. And I'll start posting from those. And then people will be like, oh, hey, you're doing another book. Great.
There you go.
So nothing sells your first book like your most recent book.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. So beyond that, we obviously have a lot of the old prints that we did. And then we have the pre-order is still up for Halloween. And the pre-order will be up on Wednesday after the Kickstarter ends for Hannibal. So you'll be able to get the, to conceivably, if you still wanted to. And like I said, the Thing book is still available through us and on Amazon until it runs out. But once Amazon's stock is out, they won't be getting any more.
Great. Well, congrats. That's amazing.
Yeah, it took us 5 years, but we did it. So it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And it's great too to be able to say when publishers go, well, how many copies of that did you sell? Because that's always a question they ask when they're like, yeah, exactly. All of them.
All of them. Although,
hey, listen, you tell a publisher, you sold 10,000 copies of anything these days, especially an art book, they're listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, I hope that you have many more success stories like that for many years to come.
Thank you. We hope to.
Yeah. And we will keep a close eye on the Printed in Blood forums and check our inboxes furiously for any of those secret projects that.
Oh, I know something I could tell you about. We're doing our first non-art book. Coming out next year. It is an episode guide for Ultraman.
What? Oh.
We are doing the first official US published Ultraman, covering the original 8 seasons of the TV show, and it'll be out next year. We're hoping to do a Kickstarter for that as well, and we are hoping, fingers crossed, that with the hopeful success of that project, that they'll let us do an Ultraman art book.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and honestly, just like your Thing art book, once you have an episode guide out there, other people will say, do one for us. Do one for us.
Well, I don't know how much you guys know about Ultraman, but there's like 37 seasons of that TV show. They've been running seasons of that show since the 60s. Yeah. I started digging. I knew nothing about Ultraman when we started talking to them, and I started digging into like what exists of it, and I was dumbfounded. There's like 50 feature films. There are 30 some seasons of TV series ranging from either 20 some episodes to 52 episodes a year. I mean, we're talking thousands of episodes of this show that I just didn't even know existed. I knew about like the one was on TV when I was a kid and the one that Netflix just did.
Never underestimate people's desire to get gigantic and punch out a monster.
Absolutely correct.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time.
You're back.
This has been Super Pulp Science, where we've been talking about how genre gets made. We've been talking with Steve, the pumping blood from Printed in Blood, beating heart. And this is Gregory Kamichek encouraging you to join the fight and make comics.